This week, sovereignty changes hands in the south. 2 supercarriers die to spies. PAPI and the Imperium find ways to keep themselves occupied, and events continue to unfold in Pochven. Hello pod people, I'm Frost and this is your weekly EVE Online update. Welcome back. So as the thumbnail suggests, it's been a week of rather random events happening in New Eden, and we'll cover all of those in a minute, but the first thing we have to do, as always, is announce winners of the Megathron Scope Syndication skins. I have 4 winners this week, so I have to make a little bit of room in a minute, because I have the 2 winners from the 7th of June, and then 2 winners came through from last week's episode, the 14th of June. So let me move across. So we have Julia Naria and Phoebe Incanon, so two girl tunes representing for the 7th of June. And for the 14th of June, we had Skull Ormond and Rona Ottrich. So congratulations to these 4 pilots for winning their Megathron Scope Syndication skins. And we will be getting more later on in the show. I have 2 more to give away. All right, so let's get started. Up into my box, we have Dotland in front of us. And we're going to go straight up towards this area just to kind of close off on some stuff. So we've got the Forge and Ethereum Reach. So last week I stated that there were some Riotaroos still left to be cleared out that belong to the initiative, and Slice and Co were clearing them out. That's now all been done. But one thing I was corrected on is I said that the 5 Riotaroos were in PX-IHN, when in fact they were in AKE-YS. Now, not the biggest mistake, but it was still a mistake and I got picked up on it. And so therefore I am giving a correction because you guys do not let me slip 1 inch, and I respect that. So there we go. So that's where those Riotaroos were. So that pretty much covers it up north. There's not pretty much anything else going on from a strategic point of view up in the north. So where we're going to go now is we're going to head south and we're going to go down to Feythabolis, because Feythabolis, there's actually been quite a bit going on. The first thing is that the Bastion were holding some sovereignty in this region, and that sovereignty is now gone, and it has now been taken over by Russian Legion of Honor. Now, RLH were closely associated with IGC, and they were, I believe, renters of tests back in the day, and then they were kind of tied in with IGC. When IGC got kicked out, they had a conversation with XIX because apparently, as I understand, the Bastion were unwilling to give them back their SOV. And so they asked XIX, possibly even with a monetary incentive, to kind of move things along. So obviously XIX are part of FI.RE coalition. They are at war with the Bastion, aka the Imperium. And so they would have probably got down to this anyway. But that kind of the schedule kind of got moved forwards with that. And so therefore, these systems were flipped towards RLH from the Bastion. And this happened in the last few days. Now, the uninteresting thing here is, the only way I can describe it is region creep by XIX. Because if we turn off my pen for a minute, we'll go back to our universe. So XIX are part of FI.RE coalition, and they're up here in kind of Innsmother and Detterid. They've also kind of got Scalding Pass and Wicked Creek. And they said kind of that's pretty much their own territory. But if we go into Tenerifis, then it was like, well, we didn't want Tenerifis anyway, but we're still going to take this constellation. Oh yeah, and we're going to take this one as well. And then we move on to Imensia, and in Imensia it's like, well, we didn't really want this territory, but you know what, we'll take these constellations here as well. Oh, and we'll take these systems here. And then we got to Feythabolis, and it's like, you know, we're clearing out IGC, but we don't actually want the territory. And we then go to back to Feythabolis, and XIX have taken a constellation up here, and they've taken the constellation down here, and they're taking some more systems over here. So not quite sure what's going on there, because apparently XIX are not looking to expand, but they're kind of going, but we'll still take this and that. So I'll have to have words with XIX and try and find out what's going on there. Also, interestingly, Vindictive have taken some SOV over here. They've actually taken one of the systems off of Fastkick. Fastkick were associated to the Bastion. In fact, the Bastion used some Fastkick structures to aggress Evictus, who are down in the south there. They're the guys in purple down here. There we go, along the bottom. And so yeah, Vindictive were originally in Imensia, and they got pushed out of Imensia when Deepwater hooligans and other third parties kind of came into Immensure and kind of evicted them. So I think they've since been in period basis for Paragon Soul, and it looks like they're kind of making their way east again. So that's kind of interesting as well. So I think that brings us up to date on what's happening. Oh yeah, and the other thing as well is because RLH are now seen as aligning themselves over to PAPI, in other words, Fire Coalition, which are part of PAPI, they've been attacked by a goon swarm, and they were attacked by a bunch of bombers. And these bombers are going to come up a lot in conversation later on. But you can see that these 4 Rorquals died today, all within a few minutes of each other, all in the same system. It looks like a couple of them were actually the same pilot as well on alt. So I don't know about the other 2, but those are pretty clearly the same pilot. So that's obviously, just like IGC got hit for being aligned to the Imperium and were fair game, then obviously this is now flipped back in the other direction with Goon Swarm of the Imperium attacking now basically anything that belongs to Russia Legion of RLH, Russian Legion of Honor. Legion of Honor. Okay, so that brings us up to date then on Feythabolis. Let's go back to Feythabolis. I think that's everything. Let me double check. Yeah, so now we're going to go on to Catch very quickly. Got a couple of things to mention in Catch. So the first thing is that there was a Fortizar, which was a faction Fortizar down in Y-PNRL, and it was an Invictus Fortizar, which is quite surprising because Invictus have not been there for ages. And it's always worth mentioning these faction Fortizars simply because of their high value. It wasn't contested and it died. I think it died to AAA, so against all authorities. Dread Bomb, I think Red Menace Coalition showed up, so that's Red Alliance along with like Sorry in Advance and Wrong. And Dracarys, obviously, because that's kind of where they're holding SOV in that area. Now, this wasn't contested, and I understand from Invictus that they left it there just simply for allies to use. They couldn't be bothered to unanchor it and stuff, and they left it. And then they got to the point of having to form, and they weren't in a position to do that, so they left it to die. Same way as the Initiative left structures behind to help allies when they vacated a region. Invictus did exactly the same here. But worth mentioning, like I said, because it was a faction kill. Right, so the other thing in Catch was a Dracarys Fortizar was destroyed as well in EX6-AO. And originally I thought this was just something that Siege Green were up to because Siege Green are on the kill mail. Siege Green are over in Stain, and they're coming out and attacking generally. But actually, it turned out that PanFam, I think that was mostly Pandemic Horde and Northern Coalition, were there, and Fraternity showed up for it as well. So just interesting there, a little grouping of Siege Green actually kind of working with PanFam or being in the same kind of thing as PanFam in terms of attacking Imperium structures there. All right, then we're going to go on to Esoteria. So in Esoteria, the main thing that's happened here is all of these regions that were down here on the left were originally kind of Bastion. There was Good Sax, and I think there was a couple of Ferrata Victress also had this SOV in here. And that's now all been cleared out and it's all been flipped over to AOM. The most notable one is actually this system here, which is 0-06XF, as this was a Keepstar system. There's a test Keepstar there. And it was under a Good Sax Sinojammer for months. I mean, months and months. I believe it got shield reinforced a few times, but the timer was always wrong for Good Sax or for the Bastion to kind of deal with it, and they just couldn't bring enough numbers to kill it. So therefore, that kind of stayed, and now it's been flipped back. So that's now returned back into the test Keepstar chain. So and as of now, there is literally just one system that's still got a Bastion tag on it, but as you can see, it's already reinforced. In fact, I believe the last Fortizar that belonged to the Bastion was destroyed. That was in the system of D-FVI7. I don't even know what that is. It's somewhere on here. I haven't even paid any attention. Let me just, so DTAC FV, there we go. Let's find out where it is. There we go. Okay, so down here on the edge. All right, good. So now we've sorted that out. And also just worth mentioning as well that that Fortizar was destroyed primarily by carriers from Pandemic Horde. So here we go, I've got it right here. Now we do know that Pandemic Horde love a carrier, but the main thing with this is that it looks like they've actually deployed carriers over to Esoteria. And this is something I mentioned very much in the intro of both the Imperium and PAPI finding things to do. It looks like PanFam seem to have deployed at least some carriers and some junk clones over to this part of the universe, and are just finding content to kill and finding some content basically in this area. Also, the thing to remember with Esoteria is that the Bastion, whilst they're no longer deployed in Esoteria, they've now deployed over to Stain. I think there are a few jumps into Stain, and their plan is to continue to aggress into Esoteria. Although I've not kind of seen anything major in terms of structures destroyed or big fights coming out of that, but who knows, and I will keep an eye on that. All right, and what do we do now? Okay, I've talked about all of those things. Oh yeah, there's a good Sax Fortizar as well that was destroyed in 0-06XF. It was actually opposite the Keep Star and on the grid with the Keep Star, and that's been destroyed. All right, so time to do the giveaway. So here we go, Megathron Scope Syndication skin. That's the skin that I have to give away. I have 2 to give away. I think you know by now the format. I generally need you to make up a sentence in the comments with a particular keyword. And the keyword this week is going to be random. So this is a good chance to tell me about the random stuff that has happened to you in Eve. I'm sure that'll make for interesting read in the comments, as Eve does have plenty of random. So there you go, that's your keyword. Cutoff date is Friday the 25th of June at 1800 UTC. So make sure you get your comment in before then. All right, there we go, giveaway done, time to move on. And we're gonna move on to, we're gonna leave that Paragon Soul Period basis, Querious. Okay, so Querious, we're actually gonna be talking about Fate Querious. Fate Querious being, oops, there we go, this region over, these systems over here. There's 2 constellations which aren't actually accessible via Querious except through Delve, so they're kind of more part of Delve, which is why I call them Fate Querious. But we had some stuff happened here, and the 2 things that happened first of all was 2 supercarriers belonging to PAPI were caught and destroyed, and let me see where they were. I'm trying to remember now. I think one was in ETAC V possibly. Let me just see if I can find it. I've lost all my notes there, but I can't remember now. I think one was in QY1E, I know that for certain, and I'm sure another one was maybe in ETAC V. Okay, it was in one of these systems anyway, or maybe in ETAC Y. Anyway, let's find out. Let's stay on the case here. So they're right here. Okay, QY1E and 8QT, there we go. All right, so these were the 2 supercarriers that died. Now, the reason why I mention them is not because they're ratting carriers, because I normally don't mention ratting kills. It was the circumstances in which they died. And if we actually look right here, no, that's the wrong one. Let's have a look. It's this one. Here we go. So this is the Hell, and it was destroyed once again by the Imperium with bombers. So the Imperium been super busy with bombers this week. As you can see, they killed those 4 Rorquals over in Feythabolis, but they've also been dropping on Legacy Coalition as well, and that's what's been keeping them occupied. But if we actually scroll down this list, the thing I wanted to point out to you is all the way down the bottom here. a lot of bombers on this. Here it is. There we go. Right here. So this Titan was actually, sorry, not Titan. This supercarrier, along with the other supercarrier, they were both bubbled by this tune, Ran Aldurad, who is Pandemic Horde. So this was an awoxed tackle. And the thing here is to point out is that first of all, it was a spy. But also, this is the problem that you have when you have like kind of the big blue donut and you have lots of alliances that are blue to each other, especially with something like a group like Pandemic Horde. So if we actually look at the tune, I've got the tune right here, and you can see that the tune was created on the 7th of March, and within a week, they were in Pandemic Horde, and then it only takes 3 months to train up into a dictator, and that's essentially what they did. But the flag here was actually with the fact that they were in Crimson Killers for less than 24 hours. And if we actually look at Crimson Killers are out of the blue, and we're going to talk about out of the blue in a minute, but they're actually part of Volta. and Volta are definitely not the kind of group that will take a brand new player that's got less than 24 hours unless they're an alt. So the fact there is that this is the potential problem with new bro alliances, is if there's no filtering whatsoever, then you can get spies into these groups very, very easily. And it makes it very difficult when you're blue to everybody around you if you have these new groups, these new player groups that have these kind of players able to get in and get their spies implanted. So that's kind of what I wanted to point out with that. And that brings us up to date on Querious. So, and there was also another thing as well that happened in Querious very quickly. It was, I actually missed it last week. It actually happened on Sunday, the 13th of June. But PAPI were unanchoring a Feythabolis, and they weren't paying attention, and they didn't watch the clock properly. And it was scooped. So the freighter arrived late, and it was scooped by a raw call, and basically a free Feythabolis there for the Imperium. So there we go. Right, so then we're going to go on to Fountain. So the reason why I want to talk about Fountain is for two reasons. The first is I talked about last week how out of the blue, once again we just mentioned those guys, out of the blue, US time zone Volta stated they were going to aggress into Fountain, and they were going to hit structures, and they were going to take Sav. And I actually have a campaign here that was supplied to me covering Fountain and the Outer Ring from the 30th of April through to the 21st of June. And as you can see here, there were no structures lost, and the losses for, let me clear that, there we go. The losses for out of the blue were at 17 billion versus 6 billion lost to Forsaken Empire and Celestial Empire. Now, I don't know if the other parts of Legacy Coalition and FAPI were involved in this, but either way, the main objective, which was to take Sov and destroy structures, hasn't been accomplished. But the thing also that's quite interesting is that a fight broke out between Out of the Blue and Forsaken Empire and Celestial over an Athanor. And this Athanor actually belonged to Worthless Care Bears. And Worthless Care Bears are part of Test Alliance. And this is where it gets really strange, is that there was a death, a kill of a hell that I missed the other week. This is actually on the 13th. And I didn't include it because it was a ratting fit. It's got a SIBO on there. In fact, it's got 2 SIBOs. So it's like, no, this is just another whaling kill. I don't have to worry about it. But actually what I didn't notice was that it was actually killed by Forsaken Empire. You can see there's Forsaken Empire tunes there. And in theory, they're kind of blue to each other. Forsaken Empire is part of FAPI, and while they're not part of Legacy Coalition, officially part of PAPI, they're part of FAPI, and so in theory they're blue. And I went and did some digging, and I found out the whole story with this. And what it is that Worthless Care Bears wanted to come and mine for gas in Fountain. And so they tried to set up in this constellation down here. But it belongs to Forsaken Empire, and essentially the gas miners kind of started having fights with each other and disagreements. They tried to do it friendly, it didn't work out, and then they started shooting each other's Athanors. And because they were shooting each other's Athanors, they were putting them into hull, which then destroys the rock in terms of this being drawn out. And so they were just aggressing each other. And it got to the point where Worthless Care Bears actually tried to reinforce the Feythabolis in 3WE. And it escalated to the point where Worthless Care Bears dropped this hell, and then Forsaken Empire dropped Supercarriers. And so they ended up with a Supercat fight over gas mining between friendlies. So there you go. So that's the story there. I do not believe it's resolved as of this date. I think it's still ongoing. And so there's definitely going to be some random blue on blue kills going down. I don't know if it'll escalate to supers again or titans, but we shall see. All right, so is that it for Fountain? Yeah, that's it for Fountain. All right, so in fact, tell a lie, the Feythabolis was actually in here. It was in J5A-IX. I think the moon mining was taking place in 3WE-KY. Just so I get my systems right, because I know otherwise you'll pick me up on it. Okay, so then we're going to come on to, let's get past the ad, go on to Delve. All right, so with Delve, first of all, this constellation has been super quiet. There has basically been nothing going on. You know, this was originally the focus of the war, not the case anymore. Nothing's really been going on. I've actually made a tally. I think there was 185 billion lost to PAPI, 185 billion lost to the Imperium, 120 billion lost to PAPI in this area. But some of it is down to random raw call losses, random supercarriers doing weird things, which we'll come on to later. And so therefore these numbers are kind of all a little bit all over the place and don't really mean that much. But I put the battle reports in the description as always. So first of all, a Keepstar was dropped by PAPI into E-VKJV, so they have one on the 3-D MQT gate, so they can Skynet in the same way that Imperium can Skynet from 3-D MQT with the Fortizar they anchored there. So complete standoff on both sides, so neither side can really go through the gate without each side dropping carriers onto the structure and then sending down their fighters. So there you go, so that's pretty much that for that. Now, the things I wanted to mention were actually kind of random deaths. So the first one, and this is definitely my random death of the week. It is a Nyx, a supercarrier that belonged to Goon Swarm that died in 1DQ1A, literally just off the gate. Let me be it. So it's 42 kilometers off the gate. But the thing of note is that it was destroyed by Goon Swarm. So Goon Swarm shot one of their own supercarriers. And from what I understand, and from what I saw from the clips that were sent to me of chat and local, is that this pilot at 4 o'clock in the morning may have been a little bit inebriated and decided he wanted to defect to test and was screaming in local that he's going to defect to test. He's going to jump the supercarrier into T5ZI and take it to the Citadel, to the Keepstar. And unfortunately, because he wasn't quite on the case, I think he forgot to bring his prop mod and tried slow boating through the bubbles. The bubbles then became wobbles as he got slowed down even more. Can't believe I just said bubbles and wobbles. And then basically he wasn't going anywhere, still ranting and got destroyed. And that was that. So there you go. So supercarrier getting awoxed in 1DQ1-A. Then the other thing that was a little bit random was a pilot believed that persistence really paid off. And this pilot decided to lose 3 raw calls back to back in the same system. So you can see there was one here at 12:58, and then there was another one. Oh, actually no, that was a procurer. My bad. It was this one. So we go. So 1440, 1916, and 80422, and I think 2 of them were actually in the same belt. And every time the Imperium dropped bombers on him and destroyed the raw call. Yeah, that was pretty random to be doing that, but then each to their own. They can play their game how they want. There was also a beacon provides. In fact, there was a raw call that died to a beacon. I can't even remember where it was. It jumped into 1DQ1-A. I'm not seeing it here, but I'm pretty certain it happened that basically it was a test pilot again. I think he panicked and jumped to the beacon and jumped to the 1DQ beacon instead of the T5ZI beacon and got destroyed. And I can't see it on here, but I'm sure it was on here. I will have to double check it, but I'm pretty certain that was definitely what it happened. It's strange I can't see it. Maybe it's just further down. Okay, a lot of raw calls dying all over the place, as usual. Okay, so the main thing that we get from all of this is that PAPI are not progressing on attacking kind of this constellation, the EO-EMK constellation. There's been no kind of words coming out as to what's going to happen next. So it looks like the various PAPI groups are keeping them as entertained in different ways. Like I said, PAM-FAM seem to be going over to Esoteria, specifically Pandemic Horde and another coalition. The Imperium are sort of going whaling and using their bombers pretty effectively, covering most of Delft, going into Fountain and Feythabolis as well. And that's about it. So that's pretty much up to date with kind of the World War B side of things, World War B 2 side of things. But there's other bits I want to cover as well. Just very quickly, I wanted to mention up in Tribute, literally Triggered have anchored their first Keepstar. Now, the reason why this is worthy is because literally Triggered didn't exist 3 years ago. So they started started up, created a new alliance, and 3 years down the road, they're anchoring their first keep star. And I wanted to mention this because a lot of the times they say it's always the same alliances, nothing ever changes in Eve, nobody ever grows, nobody ever prospers. And so for those bitter vets and for the people that are quite negative, I wanted to sort of say that, well, literally Triggered have grown their alliance and are now very proud of the fact they've dropped their keep star, and congratulations to them for doing that. And obviously they've done it as part of Winter Coalition, made the right friends, and it's worked out for them. So there you go. Right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to come on to Pochven. So with Pochven, there's quite the story going on. So with Pochven, let's drop into Pochven. There we go. Bloop. And in Pochven, it's mostly been focused around this system of Rira Shida. So this is what's been happening, is that access into Pochven is now much, much easier than it ever was before. And you can get in from filaments. You can also get in quite easily because wormholes are facing into Pochven instead of facing out as they do with standard wormholes, which means finding wormholes local to you that always lead into Pochven is always very easy. And so therefore groups are used to getting into Pochven quite easily now. And as a consequence of this, all the structures that are in Pochven, that's the upwell structures, have been getting hit. And the Triglavian groups basically got fed up of constantly having to react to timers from these third parties coming in to Pochven and attacking them. And so the groups got together and had a conversation, and basically it comes with to Stribog Clade, Kybernots Clade, Interstellar Triglavian Collective, and later on Triglavian Unity, all deciding to shoot their own upwell structures. So the plan is they're going to shoot their own structures, remove all upwell structures from Pochven because you can't anchor new ones, and they're going to live in NPC stations. And the only group that decided against this was actually Warden of the Abyssal Overwatch. Wardens of the Abyssal Overwatch instead decided to join the enemies, who are the people that have been setting off most of these timers, which is dock workers. So Wardens of the Abyssal Overwatch have moved over to dock workers. Then there's also been a complete meltdown in Triglavian Unity. So Triglavian Unity I think it's Triglavian Unity, or is it... No, Interstellar Triglavian Collective, my bad. So Interstellar Triglavian Collective, as you can see, has basically just completely dissolved. It went from over 300 pilots down to 5. I'm not quite sure where they've all gone. I don't know whether they've actually moved into other groups, but they have definitely basically gone. And like I said, Warns of the Abyssal Overwatch have been disbanded. Stribog Clade is still looking fine, as are Kybernots Clade and Triglavian Unity are the 3 remaining Triglavian groups that are all working together. And I can confirm also that these Astra houses and structures are being destroyed because I have one here once again from Secret Space Squirrels, greatest name ever. And you can see here on the left that Stribog Clade are actually indeed shooting their own structures. So there you go. So that's pretty much it for Pochven in terms of what's going on. So a bit of a meltdown there in terms of some groups like splitting off, and also that there's a big deal choosing to shoot your own structures. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen with Pochven from here on. So far, I believe 2 Astra houses and a Tatara have been destroyed. And I think that there's other stuff that's now on timer as well. So that's going to continue through the week. And I believe at this stage, there are still 6 Fortizars that belong to the Triglavian groups that are still left. And so I'll be keeping an eye and see what happens to those. All right. Then finally, just come on to last thing, which is the Enter the Portal update. I just wanted to bring this up. So this has been on Singularity on the test server for just over a week now. So potentially this is going to come tomorrow. Tomorrow being the 22nd of June. If it isn't the 22nd of June, it will most likely be here on the 29th of June. So just to get you up to speed on this, the main things that are happening is that Black Ops battleships have now got a new thing called a group jump. Going to call it a grump from now on. They can now grump instead of bridge. And by grumping, they use less fuel. So that's kind of the big thing that's changed. And the idea is to encourage battleships to no longer just be used to bridge, but these Black Ops battleships to actually be used in combat. And as a consequence of that, they're all getting big buffs to damage, and you can look through that all yourself if you want. The list is, I will put the link in the description below. Other elements that have been changed is the covops as well. The frigates are getting some changes. They're having all their combat bonuses removed, and now they're splitting them off between Amar and Caldari, which are these two, are getting a scan deviation bonus. So they're going to be able to get a boost on their scanning accuracy, whilst the other two, which is the Galanti and the Mimitar, are getting a bonus to cloaked velocity right here. Now, to me, this is kind of pointless. I'm not quite sure why you would use that. I would have preferred to see, like a buff to align time. I think that would have been much more useful to these covops to try and get away from bubble camps and stuff like that. Other things to note as well is that Helios has had its high slot increased by 1. It only had 2 slots before, so there was no room for the nullifier if you put on a probe scanner and a cloak, which is kind of your standard fit for a covops. Funnily enough, the pacifier is not included in here, which I would have expected it to be. So that's not really used that much because it's so expensive. I expect it will not be used at all now as a consequence. And then finally, the Edencom ships are now getting a bonus to their chain lightning weapons, the Vorton projectors. They're having the max target hit increased from 5 to 10, so essentially doubled. All right, so that's pretty much it. I think I've covered everything for this week. As always, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications. Do mention me in your Corp Discords and your Alliance Discords, and tell me about your random Eve moments in the YouTube comments below. As always, thank you for watching. Bye.